The glowing blue neon holographic system screen hovered before Hanju's eyes, displaying a staggering 25 billion won reward. Inside the massive virtual reality world, Hanju moved with flawless precision against a towering, armored boss monster. Sweat beaded on his forehead inside his cutting-edge VR capsule, as victory drew tantalizingly close. One final, decisive strike would secure the massive payout he needed to completely erase his overwhelming debts. Suddenly, the heavy metal door of his real-world apartment was violently kicked open with a deafening crash. A group of burly, aggressive loan sharks marched into the room, their faces twisted in anger. The leader of the debt collectors barked an order while pointing directly at the expensive VR equipment. Without a shred of hesitation, a thug stepped forward and violently ripped the thick power cables from the wall. In an instant, the bright system interface before Hanju's eyes flickered wildly and began to dissolve into static. The critical boss monster unleashed a devastating, unblockable counterattack directly onto the immobile avatar. A massive red notification reading Avatar Death flashed across the collapsing virtual horizon. The VR capsule hissed open automatically, forcing Hanju to gasp for breath as he returned to reality. The loan sharks grabbed him by his collar, dragging him out of the capsule and throwing him onto the hard floor. They presented him with an official notice detailing his utter financial ruin and total bankruptcy. The lead collector leaned in close, warning him that his life would be forfeit if the billions of won weren't repaid immediately. After the thugs finally departed, Hanju sat alone in the dark, staring blankly at his lifeless, disconnected equipment. His years of hard work, his high-level character, and his ultimate chance at financial redemption had vanished in seconds. Suddenly, the main monitor of his broken PC flickered to life on its own, casting an eerie violet glow. Hanju raised his head in confusion as a bizarre text message began to type itself across the blank screen. The text offered an invitation to a secretive, ultra-hardcore, irreversible anniversary event. A digital voice suddenly echoed directly through the room's speakers, sounding completely detached yet ancient. The voice introduced itself as Aquila, the absolute game master of the virtual realm. Aquila stated that they were looking for a legendary problem solver capable of surviving the ultimate test. The reward for completing this secretive challenge was an unbelievable 25 billion won payout. However, Aquila warned that the terms of this specific event were absolute and entirely unforgiving. Once inside this server, logging out would be completely disabled until the game reached its true ending. More importantly, death within this ultra-hardcore server would be absolute and permanent in reality. Looking around his ruined home and remembering the threats of the loan sharks, Hanju realized he had nothing left to lose. With a steady hand, he reached out and pressed the glowing acceptance button on the floating interface. A massive surge of electromagnetic energy instantly enveloped the entire capsule, humming with immense power. Hanju felt a sudden, sharp shock pass through his nervous system as his consciousness was forcefully pulled away. The real world completely faded into a void of endless swirling digital data streams. When the intense vertigo finally subsided, Hanju opened his eyes to find himself standing in an entirely unfamiliar place. The air felt heavy, smelling faintly of ancient dust, ash, and old magical energy. He quickly checked his status window, only to find that his previous high-level avatar had been completely reset to level 1. A permanent system notification hovered persistently in the top corner of his vision, reading Logout status disabled. Realizing the gravity of his situation, he took a deep breath and braced himself for the brutal journey ahead. In the far distance, a massive ancient structure resembling a dragon's ribcage loomed over the horizon. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet began to vibrate violently as a low, rumbling growl echoed from the shadows. Two glowing crimson eyes snapped open within the darkness, locking directly onto the level 1 savior. The crimson eyes within the darkness widened, radiating an intense pressure that paralyzed Hanju instantly. A massive creature shifted in the shadows, its heavy scales grinding against the stone floor with a terrifying echo. Suddenly, a brilliant neon blue system interface flashed violently in front of his eyes. The holographic message warned that the logout function had been completely restricted on this hardcore server. Hanju frantically smashed his fingers against the invisible air, trying to force open the main settings menu. Every single attempt returned an error noise, confirming that he was truly trapped inside this digital hell. The level 1 tag above his head flickered weakly, emphasizing his absolute vulnerability in this dangerous world. He realized that a single mistake here would mean actual physical death in the real world. Shaking off his panic, Hanju looked at his inventory slot and spotted the rare dragon bone item. The artifact pulsated with an otherworldly energy, radiating ancient runes into the cool air. Without hesitating, he selected the item and initiated the high-risk consumption process. The dragon bone dissolved into a blinding liquid light that forced its way directly into his chest. Hanju fell to his knees as an overwhelming burning sensation surged through his entire avatar network. Glowing golden lines mapped themselves out across his skin like mystical circuits. A thunderous announcement echoed through the cavern as the system recognized the legendary modification. A giant golden text revealed that he had successfully unlocked the hidden class Lord of Dragon Bones. The excruciating pain vanished instantly, replaced by a massive influx of raw, untamed power. His basic statistics multiplied exponentially on the floating interface, shooting past normal early game limitations. Heavy, deliberate footsteps suddenly echoed from the dark tunnel ahead of him. Hanju took a defensive stance, his new magical energy swirling around his hands instinctively. A tall warrior wearing dark, blood-stained armor and carrying a massive serrated blade stepped into view. The man introduced himself as Rudd, a veteran monster hunter searching for rare resources in this zone. Rudd narrowed his eyes, immediately sensing the abnormal aura radiating from Hanju. Hanju quickly adjusted his strategy, introducing himself by his new gaming alias, Lord Valor. Before they could negotiate, a pack of mutated cave wolves rushed out from the dark fissures. Rudd swung his massive blade in a wide arc, instantly cleaving the first beast in half. Another monster lunged directly toward Lord Valor from a blind spot above the rocks. Valor raised his hand, channeling his newly acquired dragonbone magic for the very first time. A sharp spike of pure calcified energy erupted from the ground, impaling the creature mid-air. Rudd stopped fighting for a brief second, visibly stunned by the rookie's devastating magical power. The remaining monsters scattered back into the deep shadows, terrified by the sudden show of force. Valor lowered his hand, the bone spikes retracting smoothly back into his glowing skin interface. Rudd walked over, sheathing his giant sword with a heavy metallic click. The hunter remarked that such ancient magic hadn't been seen in these territories for centuries. Recognizing the value of a powerful ally, Valor proposed that they form a temporary tactical alliance. Rudd crossed his massive arms, considering the proposal while measuring the youth's potential. Valor explained that his unique abilities could help them navigate the deeper, more lethal sectors ahead. A rough smile broke across the scarred hunter's face as he finally extended his heavy, gloved hand. They firmly shook hands, sealing a critical contract that would ensure their immediate mutual survival. Just then, a deep, earth-shaking roar vibrated through the floorboards from the lower levels. The system interface flashed a crimson warning screen, indicating an elite field boss was approaching. Massive stone pillars began to crumble around them as a colossal shadow blocked their only exit route. The falling debris crashed violently to the earth as Hanju and Rudd narrowly escaped the collapsing cavern. Realizing that survival required a position of power, Hanju decided to change his identity to protect his secret class. From that moment on, he declared that he would be known across this hardcore world as Lord Valor. Rudd agreed to guide him to the nearest base of operations where the strongest fighters gathered to survive. They eventually approached a heavily fortified mercenary camp surrounded by sharpened wooden spikes. Armed guards stood at the iron gates, looking down at the two approaching travelers with deep suspicion. A stern man with a scarred face and magnificent silver armor stepped forward to command the gate. This intimidating leader was Reeves Schultz, the legendary commander of the elite mercenary force. Hanju stepped forward without a hint of fear, locking eyes directly with the formidable commander. Reeves announced that only those who proved their strength in the combat trials could enter his ranks. The surrounding mercenaries laughed loudly, doubting that the slender newcomer would survive a single round. Lord Valor calmly walked into the center of the ring, his dark cloak billowing in the cold night wind. A massive shadow suddenly fell over the arena as his first opponent stepped into the light. This giant was Charlotte, a notorious brawler famous for crushing opponents with bare hands. Charlotte roared in anticipation, shaking the very ground with her immense physical presence. Lord Valor observed her stance instantly, his internal UI highlighting her combat attributes and weaknesses. Without warning, Charlotte lunged forward with a ferocious strike that tore through the air. Valor tilted his head just an inch to the side, allowing the deadly fist to graze past his hair. The crowd gasped in amazement as the newcomer avoided the devastating attack with absolute ease. Infuriated by the miss, Charlotte spun around and unleashed a rapid barrage of heavy blows. Valor danced backward gracefully, his movements fluid and perfectly calculated by his veteran instincts. Activating a fraction of his dragon bone power, a faint golden aura began to radiate from his boots. He stepped into Charlotte's blind spot while she was overextended from her last heavy swing. With a swift and precise strike, Valor drove his palm directly into Charlotte's exposed midsection. The massive brawler doubled over instantly as the sheer kinetic force shattered her defense. Charlotte crashed heavily onto the dirt, completely incapacitated by a single flawless counterattack. Absolute silence fell over the entire mercenary camp as everyone stared at the victor in disbelief. Reeves Schultz slowly began to clap, a rare, genuine smile breaking across his scarred face. The commander declared that Lord Valor had not only passed, but had dominated the trial completely. Valor bowed his head slightly, successfully securing his place within the elite organization. Later that evening, Valor was invited into the commander's private tactical tent to discuss strategy. Reeves unrolled an ancient parchment map that detailed the layout of the entire continent. Valor noticed several glowing markers on the map that resembled ancient mythical creatures. Reeves explained that these marks represented the locations of the world's mythical game guardians. These ancient guardians held the legendary keys required to unlock the world's true ending. Valor knew that defeating these entities was his only ticket to clearing his massive debt and surviving. The commander warned him that a rival faction was also tracking down the exact same guardians. This hostile force would ruthlessly eliminate anyone who dared to interfere with their dark mission. Valor smiled faintly, confident that his advanced knowledge of game mechanics would give him the edge. Suddenly, a loud blast shattered the night air as the camp's magical ward system turned blood red. An urgent system notification materialized before Valor's eyes, warning of an imminent high-level invasion. The crimson system notifications blinked aggressively in the center of Lord Valor's field of vision. Earth-shattering tremors rippled through the stone foundations of the mercenary camp. Valor tightened his grip on his weapon as the walls around him began to fracture. Across the courtyard, Valpurgis parried a relentless onslaught of corrupted elite invaders. The dark energy of the invading monsters surged forward like an unstoppable tidal wave. Valor activated his Dragonbone passive skill to boost his agility stats to the absolute maximum. A massive explosion tore through the central tower, exposing deep ancestral chambers below. Valpurgis stood directly in the center of the blast, her heavy outer armor completely shattering away. Beneath the broken steel, a magnificent silver uniform detailed with royal insignias materialized. She announced her true identity as Chartier, the hidden guardian of the realm's lost bloodline. The system immediately updated the main quest tracker, confirming the discovery of the legendary guardian. However, the collapsing fortress walls began to cave inward, threatening to bury everyone alive. Valor knew he had to execute a perfect escape plan before the zone completely closed off. He channeled all his remaining mana directly into Hexak's mythical Dragon Wings item. Two massive, ethereal dragon wings erupted violently from Valor's back, casting a brilliant shadow. He lunged forward and grabbed Chartier tightly just as the ground beneath her completely gave way. With a mighty beat of Hexak's wings, they launched directly into the chaotic, stormy sky. Falling debris crashed harmlessly against the glowing magical barrier generated by the wings. Below them, the remaining monsters shrieked in anger as their targets escaped out of reach. Chartier looked up at Valor, her expression shifting from profound shock to deep gratitude. Valor steered them toward the coordinates of the world's final hidden core server gate. A massive golden lock system suddenly appeared in the sky, blocking the final destination. Chartier raised her ancestral sword, channeling her guardian power to unlock the gate's barrier. The legendary seal shattered into millions of sparkling particles, clearing their path forward. Valor activated the final Dragonbone overdrive mechanism to push through the portal. They materialized inside the luminous central chamber, where the core system of the game resided. The holographic form of Game Master Aquila manifested before them with a calm smile. Aquila congratulated Valor for successfully completing the ultimate hardcore challenge against all odds. A massive golden system window popped up, officially confirming the completion of the 25 billion won event. Hanju felt an immense weight lift from his shoulders as his real-world bank notification synced. Chartier thanked him for saving her people and restoring balance to the digital realm permanently. The logout button finally rematerialized in the main menu, glowing with a soft, inviting blue light. Valor looked back at the beautiful fantasy world one last time, completely at peace with his journey. He reached out his hand and firmly pressed the glowing confirmation interface. His avatar slowly dissolved into millions of bright, glittering code fragments. Back in the real world, the advanced VR capsule lid hissed softly and opened up. Hanju sat up slowly, looking at his phone to confirm the massive debt was completely wiped out. He smiled genuinely, realizing that his nightmare was finally over and his freedom was secured. The legendary savior of the hardcore server had completed his ultimate mission flawlessly. With his life restored and his legendary status sealed, Hanju stepped forward into a bright new future,